The phone screen felt cold and merciless in my palm. I was sitting in my office at the Pacific Regional Center, huge, sterilely cold, bathed in the artificial light of 3 monitors. And that light picked out of the darkness my father's words, which I'd read for probably the 10th time. They weren't supposed to mean anything. I repeated it to myself like a mantra. They shouldn't hurt. They shouldn't. But they dug in like a splinter under a fingernail. Stupid, insignificant, but unbearably painful. Don't come for Christmas Eve. Marcus's fiancée is a pediatric surgeon. We're celebrating her success. It would be awkward if you were there when everyone was congratulating a real doctor. A real doctor. He emphasized the last phrase. Accidentally? I don't think so. I leaned back in my chair, feeling bitterness rise in my throat. My empire hummed quietly around me. I, Emma Thornton, am the medical director of a Level 1 trauma center with 847 beds. I commanded an army of 2,847 people, doctors, nurses, technicians. I raised 3 collapsed hospital systems from their knees. 6 months ago, Forbes magazine included me on their damn list of innovators, and that article, in an obscenely expensive frame, was hanging in my assistant's office because I was ashamed? No. Awkward. As if it were some kind of boast. But for him, for Dad, it was all dust. I wasn't a real doctor. My fingers tapped out the answer. Understood. Briefly, without emotion, as if she were approving a budget. A soft knock on the door brought me back to reality. Rebecca, my shadow, my shield, entered. Dr. Thornton, the board of directors expects your final recommendations on expanding pediatric surgery by January 2nd. We also have a final round of interviews scheduled for the 26th, 3 candidates for the position of Chief of Pediatric Surgery. Pediatric surgery. The phrase sounded like a mockery. The judge's irony was so perfect that it took my breath away. Send me their files. My voice was as even as steel. I'll review them this evening. She nodded and left, leaving me alone with the hum of the servers and my own thoughts. Oh, what he didn't know. What none of them, sitting at their celebratory table, knew. I didn't just become a doctor. I became an architect. I decided who would enter these sacred walls, who would be called real, whose lives and careers would depend on my nod or cold gaze. I was the gatekeeper to their paradise. And this thought, bittersweet at the same time, unfolded before me a movie of my past. I had always been a backdrop to Marcus's radiance. He was the golden boy whose smile lit up the room. I was a quiet shadow in the corner with a book. Dad, a successful pharmaceutical salesman, idolized presentations, glamour, and victory. Marcus was his living embodiment. And me? Emma's doing great. She's working hard. My mother's voice sounded muffled in my memory, as if through glass. And then, louder, a slap on the shoulder, my father's baritone. And Marcus got invited to 3 A-list universities. What a success! Even when I got into Johns Hopkins PMED, one of the most rigorous programs in the world, he didn't even look up from his tablet. Well done, honey. Marcus, tell them about the state championship. Medical school was hell, which I got through sheer stubbornness. While Marcus was enjoying college life, his bills paid for by athletic expenses, I was exhausted on ER shifts, racking up debt that was choking me like a noose. $340,000. Marcus graduated with a marketing degree, 0 debt, and a job with a friend of Dad's, $62,000 a year. Dad posted 7 perfect photos of Marcus at graduation on Facebook and 1 blurry one of me in the corner. So proud of both our kids. And then there was fake medicine, my management residency. You don't even treat patients, Dad said. And in his voice I heard not disappointment, but contempt. What's the point? I tried to explain about the systems, about the thousands of lives saved. But Mom would interrupt. Marcus is now dating a lawyer, a very successful firm. These women, his fiancées, came and went like props in a bad play. A teacher, an architect, Every family dinner was their parade, and I was an extra, munching on Mom's roast and answering monosyllabically, "Fine," when asked about work. My victories were invisible to them. An assignment to Seattle Memorial at 29? What, are you going to treat me again? A transfer to Pacific Regional at 32, one of the youngest GMDs in the country. Not bad. Marcus just got promoted. I stopped sharing. I stopped coming. I bought a house on a hill with a stunning view of the bay. They never asked to see it. My life became filled with something else, saving crumbling worlds. Pacific Regional was a corpse 3 years ago. Patient satisfaction was in hell, mortality was rising, money was wasting away. $147 million a year. The chairman of the board, despairing, looked at me during the interview. "Dr. Thornton, can you save this?" I showed him 47 slides, a roadmap from hell to heaven. They hired me, and I became a surgeon for a dying organism. For 6 months, I performed operation after operation. I fired 12 rotten stars who everyone was afraid to touch. I pulled out the best minds in the country. I implemented protocols that reduced infections by 64%. I wrested new contracts from insurers. I built an empire from ashes. Every dollar saved, every life saved. Those were my bricks. But for them, for my family, I remained Emma with papers. Those 18 months weren't a struggle. It was all-out war. Every day, every number in the report, every incompetent person fired, every protocol implemented. That was my shot. And we didn't just survive, we thrived. Within 18 months, we were profitable again. That number on the financial report was sweeter than any praise. 2 years later, we became the highest-rated hospital in the region. Not just by reviews, but by real-world metrics: survival, safety, efficiency. The board of directors, once skeptical, now regarded me as a miracle worker. A $340,000 bonus landed in my account. I'd paid off my medical school debt in a single transfer, the same debt that had been accumulating for years, weighing me down like a weight of insolvency. I felt it lift, as if a concrete block had been lifted from my shoulders. Then came $1,200,000 in stock options. I diversified them into a portfolio that brought tears to my eyes, calling it impressively aggressive. He didn't know that aggression is my middle name. My salary soared to $485,000 a year, plus bonuses. Last year, I earned $627,000. But money was just a convenient calculator. The real currency was power. Real power. I decided the fates of departments and careers. My yes or no determined whether a new newborn saving program would survive or an unprofitable clinic would close. Insurance magnates fawned over me. Pharmaceutical kings tried to catch my eye at cocktail parties. I was bombarded with job offers that made my head spin, but I politely declined, knowing that this was my kingdom. I sat on boards, spoke at podiums in front of thousands of colleagues, consulted at crumbling hospitals for fees that started at $15,000 a day. In the medical world, my name, Dr. Emma Thornton, became synonymous with cold efficiency and ruthless success. But the moment I stepped through the door of my parents' house on Thanksgiving, I was Emma the administrator again. A shadow. Marcus brought Alexandria. Mom exulted over the phone in anticipation. "She's a pediatric surgeon, board certified." Her voice trembled with awe. I arrived with an expensive burgundy and a pie I'd baked myself, secretly hoping for Mom's nod of approval. But she reigned supreme in the living room. Alexandria. In an immaculate dress with a flawless smile, she was spouting stories from the operating room left and right. Mom and Dad hung on every word like manna from heaven. "Emma, this is Alexandria Burke, Marcus's friend. She's a pediatric surgeon," Mom introduced, her tone suggesting, "Here, see how it's done." "Nice to meet you," I said, extending my hand. Her handshake was dry, quick, lifeless. Her gaze slid over me and then returned to Dad, to his attentive face. As I was saying, the laparoscopic approach is revolutionizing our field. "Emma also works at the hospital," Mom interjected timidly. in the administration. Oh, Alexandria's smile widened a little, condescendingly polite. That's sweet. Paperwork is really important, too. Dad laughed, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. Emma's not the type to work with her hands. Never was. All the social skills in the family went to Marcus. I was silent at dinner. I carved the turkey into tiny, perfect pieces while she described a heart operation. She was talented, damn it. I could see it, but in every word, in every intonation, we surgeons, real clinical practice, those at the operating table, there was an unsolicited consolation aimed at me. At me, the pathetic office worker. Later in the kitchen, I caught snatches of their conversation. Your sister seems nice, Alexandria was saying. Emma was always different, Marcus replied. Dad's worried she wasted her medical degree on administrative work. We need all kinds of people, her voice rang out, sweet as syrup and just as sticky. Not everyone has the temperament for real patient care. I left early. No one begged me to stay. And 3 weeks later, that same message about Christmas Eve arrived. And so, on December 20th, Rebecca walked into my office with that strange, forced neutral expression she only wore in the most sensitive situations. Dr. Thornton, you need to see this. She placed a stack of papers in front of me. A resume, a job application, my job, Chief of Pediatric Surgery. The program I'd hatched, championed before the board, and secured funding for. Salary range, $380,000 to $450,000. A research budget, state-of-the-art equipment, my plan, my brainchild. And under name of candidate, Dr. Alexandria Burke. The air in the office thickened like syrup. I slowly picked up the papers. Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, residency in Philadelphia, 5 years of experience, reputable publications, recommendations from luminaries. Everything was spot on. Everything was brilliant. Her qualifications are excellent, Rebecca said cautiously. She's in the final 3. Interviews are scheduled for the 26th. I read the cover letter. A passion for pediatrics, a drive for academic excellence, a desire to build a world-class program. Words I could have written 10 years ago, full of idealism and fire. She didn't know. She had no idea who sat in that office on the top floor, who hid behind the faceless title of Chief Medical Director. I avoided publicity like the plague. Let the CEO show off in the press. My job was about numbers and reform, not glossy magazines. Alexandria Burke had applied to my hospital. She'd been through every circle of hell, through my HR departments and committees. And now she was going to come here, sit across from me, look me in the eye, trying to impress the faceless administration, the one who handles the paperwork. Schedule her for 10 a.m. on the 26th. My voice was surprisingly even, an icy, quiet stream. After the other 2 candidates, I want maximum time with each finalist. A spark flickered in Rebecca's eyes. Not sympathy, no. A deep, almost predatory understanding. She nodded. Okay, Dr. Thornton. I spent Christmas Eve alone in my beautiful, empty house. I roasted a tiny chicken, which I ate standing by the window looking out at the city lights. I watched an old movie without actually seeing it. Marcus's Instagram was a holiday ordeal. Alexandria laughing with her mom at the table, Dad raising a glass. The caption, finally, someone who understands what real success looks like. #family first, #proud of my son. At 9 o'clock, I texted Marcus, Merry Christmas. The reply came at 11:45. Thank you. M. Alex is thrilled to meet everyone. December 26th arrived like a blade, cold, sharp, honed. The sky outside was mercilessly clear, achingly blue. I donned my standard uniform of authority, a meticulously tailored navy suit, a cream silk blouse, no unnecessary details, just a thin silver watch on my wrist. My white coat hung on the door, a silent witness. Embroidered on the chest in blue thread was the words, Emma Thornton, M.D., Chief Medical Officer. Not just a doctor, an architect. The first 2 interviews went like a well-oiled symphony. Dr. Chin was a research genius. His eyes lit up when he talked about molecular markers. Dr. Anchuo was a virtuoso with a scalpel. Her survival statistics, awe-inspiring. I listened, asked questions, mentally measuring them against the department's future. They were brilliant. They were my candidates. At 2:47, Rebecca knocked. Dr. Burke is here for an interview at 3 o'clock. Give me 5 minutes, then show her out. Her voice didn't waver. I opened Alexandria's file on the screen. Everything was neat, everything was verified. Her life distilled down to publication figures and surgical success rates. On paper, perfect. I closed the laptop. The steady ticking of my watch was the only sound in the quiet office. Exactly at 2:52, I heard them. Voices in the hallway, muffled but clear. Rebecca's professional, even timbre. This way, Dr. Burke. Dr. Thornton is waiting for you. And that same confident, clear voice that 3 weeks ago had condescendingly spoken of paperwork. What a beautiful building. I'm so excited for this opportunity. The chief medical director has done a wonderful job here, Rebecca's voice echoed, a faint glint of steel in it. We've become one of the most highly regarded hospitals in the region under her leadership. That's wonderful, Alexandria responded, a light, casual politeness laced in her tone. I look forward to meeting him. A pause. Tiny, but bottomless. With her, Rebecca corrected softly, but inexorably. Oh, of course, with her, came the quick, embarrassed correction. Their silhouettes paused in front of the frosted glass of my door. I could see Alexandria's distinct outline. She was adjusting a strand of hair, straightening her shoulders. Rebecca knocked. Dr. Thornton, Dr. Burke is here. Let her in. The world narrowed to the crack of the opening door. Rebecca stepped aside, letting her go first. Alexandria entered with a practiced, radiant smile, her hand already extended for a handshake. Her gaze was fixed on Rebecca, her lips poised to pour out gratitude. Thank you so much for... And then she turned and saw me. It was cinematic, an instant transformation, confusion, a flash of recognition, then a wave of cold, icy distrust, and finally, pure animal panic. Her hand froze in midair. Her smile slipped, leaving her mouth slightly open. Her complexion, a healthy flush, turned a grayish pallor. Hello, Dr. Burke. My voice sounded quiet, even, like the surface of a lake before a storm. I didn't get up. Please sit. Her eyes, wide open, darted around the office. They grabbed the sign on my desk. Dr. Emma Thornton, Chief Medical Officer. They ran across the walls. A Johns Hopkins diploma, certificates, that very Forbes article in a stern frame that I finally managed to hang here this morning. Letters from associations, and again, at my face. Staring, trying to reconcile the image of quiet Emma with the woman in a suit at the massive oak desk. You, her voice broke, turning hoarse. You are the chief medical officer. Yes, I gestured to the chair opposite. Please sit, Dr. Burke. We have much to discuss. She didn't move, as if her luxurious heel had grown into the floor. Emma, I had no idea that the paper pusher is the one you'll be interviewing? I finished her sentence, and the words hung in the air, sharp and precise as a scalpel. I sat down, folding my hands in front of me. Yes, I understand that. Shall we begin? She cast a wild glance at the door, as if searching for a way out. Can I have a minute? You can take a few minutes if you need, I replied, without changing my tone. But you should know, this interview is being recorded for quality control purposes, as specified in the documents you signed. The recording began the moment you entered this room. That finished her off. The last vestiges of color drained from her face. She sank slowly, like a robot, into the chair. Her graceful hands clasped in her lap, and I saw a small, treacherous tremor in her fingers. I opened her file with a solemn, almost ceremonial rustle of paper. Let's start with your qualifications. A very impressive resume. Johns Hopkins. I studied there too. How was the program? It was excellent. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Your residency at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, a top-notch program. Did you work with Dr. Morrison? Yes. He and I were on the task force 2 years ago, an excellent surgeon. I'll call him as part of the reference check. I love making personal calls with all the finalists. I'm sure he'll have wonderful things to say. Alexandria's fingers dug into the leather of her purse until her knuckles turned white. Dr. Thornton, I think we should... Let's talk about your surgical results, I interrupted, softly and firmly, turning the page. I've reviewed your records. 347 procedures over 5 years, with a complication rate of 2.1%. That's slightly above the national average of 1.8% for pediatric surgery. Can you tell me about your quality improvement initiatives to address this? She stared at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. Complication rates are within acceptable ranges. Acceptable isn't what we do here, Dr. Burke. We strive for the exceptional. At Pacific Regional, our surgical complication rates are 0.9% across all departments. The Chief of Pediatric Surgery will be required to not only meet, but exceed national standards. I made a note in her file with red pen. The line was clear and bold. What strategies would you implement to improve your results? Dr. Thornton, her voice grew stronger, a mixture of humiliation and despair seething in it. Can we please talk about what, Dr. Burke? About your suitability for this position? Because that's what this interview is about. It's a position with a salary of $420,000 a year and a research budget of $150,000, and the opportunity to build a program from scratch. It's a career-defining position. So, yes, let's talk about whether you're a good fit. She flinched as if struck by an electric shock. I turned the page. Your cover letter mentioned your passion for academic medicine. Tell me about your research agenda. I'm focused on minimally invasive techniques. Yes, I've seen your publications. 2 articles in the last 3 years, both in mid-tier journals. The head of pediatric surgery at the Pacific Regional Center will be expected to publish in top journals. JAMA Surgery, New England Journal, Annals of Surgery. They will be expected to attract competitive grants. They will be expected to mentor residents and fellows. I looked up at her, icy and appraising. Do you have experience developing fellowship programs? Limited experience. Limited, I repeated, making another note. This position requires someone who can hit the ground running, someone who can build not just a surgical service, but an academic department. One who has the vision, leadership skills, and reputation to attract top talent. I closed her file again. The folder landed on the desk with a soft but decisive thud. Tell me, I said, staring at her, why you think you're that person. The silence in the office grew taut, like a string about to snap. I saw fear and rage warring in Alexandria's eyes. She made a lunge, an attempt to cling to her former unshakable confidence. I have 5 years of excellent clinical experience. Above average clinical experience, I corrected, each word falling like a drop of icy water. Your results are good, Dr. Burke, not excellent, good. And this hospital isn't satisfied with good. I worked in a public hospital. Her voice brimmed with anger, bitter and helpless. The resources at Children's Medical Center are limited compared to a place like this. Dr. Onquo came from the Mayo Clinic, I retorted, without changing my tone. Dr. Chin came from Stanford. Both have published in top journals. Both have developed innovative surgical techniques. Both have mentored dozens of residents. Both have complication rates below 1%. I leaned back in my chair, allowing the distance between us to become a tangible, unbridgeable chasm. You're competing with the best, Dr. Burke. I need you to tell me why I should choose you over them. That was the last straw. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping back, her face contorted with hurt. You know what? I don't think this is a fair interview. You clearly have some personal... Sit down, Dr. Burke. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. It was the tone that silenced 20-person meetings. The tone I used to announce department closures. The tone that actually paid $15,000 a day. It hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. She froze for a moment, then, as if against her will, sank back into her chair. Defeat. Let me be perfectly clear, I said, looking at her over my folded hands. My personal life and my professional responsibilities are completely separate. You are being evaluated solely on your qualifications, your experience, and your ability to lead a pediatric surgery department. If you feel the process is unfair, you can withdraw your application. Now. She swallowed. I don't want to withdraw. Then answer the question. Why should I hire you? She took a shaky, ragged breath, trying to gather the fragments of her professional self. I'm a good surgeon. I care about my patients. I want to build something meaningful. Like the other candidates, I reminded her mercilessly. Let's talk about leadership. Have you ever managed a team larger than 2 residents? No. Have you ever been responsible for the department's budget? I was involved in equipment procurement. Have you ever hired doctors from competing institutions? No. Have you ever negotiated better reimbursement rates with insurance companies for complex procedures? That's not usually a surgeon's job, she blurted out, a trace of her former arrogance flickering in her eyes. Here it is. The head of pediatric surgery will be solely responsible for the profit and loss of their department. They will be required to manage it like a business while maintaining the highest clinical standards. I looked at her directly, without hesitation, delivering my verdict. Dr. Burke, you are a qualified surgeon, applying for a leadership position that demands excellence. Your clinical skills are satisfactory, but your leadership experience is minimal. Your research portfolio is weak. Your results are merely acceptable, and you have demonstrated no evidence that you understand what it takes to build and lead a department at an elite medical center. Another blow. Her cheeks flushed a deep, unhealthy color. It's because of Marcus, she cried, tears brimming in her voice. This has nothing to do with Marcus, I snapped coldly. This is about whether you are fit for this position. And based on this interview, I'm not convinced that's true. You're punishing me because of your family. I evaluate you by the same criteria I evaluate every candidate. That's it. I stood up. Dr. Burke, I think we're done. Wait! She jumped up too, and now panic finally overcame the anger, contorting her features. Please, I need this job. The opportunity at Pacific Regional, it's incredible. I know I behaved badly on Thanksgiving. It's not about Thanksgiving, I repeated, already approaching the door. It's about meeting standards. But I'm a good doctor. I really am. I care about my patients. I work hard. I just want a chance to prove myself in a hospital like this. Her voice was breaking into a shrill note. Pathetic. Unprofessional. A hospital of this caliber requires doctors who have already proven themselves, I said, placing my hand on the doorknob. We don't have time to give people a chance to catch up. You can't turn me down because of a family dinner. A last, desperate swipe. I can turn you down because your qualifications don't meet our standards. I opened the door. Rebecca stood half a step away, like a guard. Her face was an impassive mask. Rebecca, please show Dr. Burke out. Our interview is over. Dr. Thornton, thank you for your time, Dr. Burke. My assistant immediately chimed in. We will make a final hiring decision by January 2nd. You will receive an email notification in any case. Alexandria remained motionless, as if hoping the earth would swallow her. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears of humiliation. Now please. Don't do this, Rebecca said quietly, but firmly, stepping forward, physically marking an escape route. Dr. Burke, this way, please. Alexandria cast me one last glance. It contained everything. Hatred, fear, the realization of failure. Marcus will find out about this. I'm sure he will, I replied calmly. Goodbye, Dr. Burke. She staggered out. Rebecca, following closely behind, directed her toward the elevators. I closed the door, but I still managed to catch snatches of her muffled, strangled voice in the hallway, rising to a hysterical whisper. "This is discrimination. She can't do this for personal reasons." The door closed with a soft click, cutting off the sound. Silence. A deep, complete, triumphant silence. I ran my palm over the smooth surface of the desk, feeling its coolness. My hands didn't tremble. There was no malice or regret in me. There was only a cold, crystal-clear peace. I returned to my desk and opened my email. My fingers paused over the keyboard for a second, then began typing quickly and accurately. To Board of Directors, Hiring Committee. Subject: Chief of Pediatric Surgery, Final Recommendation. Date: December 26th, 3:47 p.m. After completing final interviews with all 3 candidates, I recommend extending an offer to Dr. Patricia Onkuo. Her qualifications, leadership experience, and research portfolio make her the strongest candidate. Dr. Chin is an excellent second choice if Dr. Onkuo declines. Dr. Burke does not meet our standards for this position. I do not recommend extending an offer. Detailed interview notes and rating matrices are attached. I look forward to discussing this recommendation at tomorrow's board meeting. Sincerely, Emma Thornton, MD, Chief Medical Director. I reread the text. Every word was carefully crafted, measured, and devoid of emotion. Simply facts, professional assessment, final verdict. The cursor blinked on the send button. I clicked it. The email vanished with a soft, weightless whistle into the digital abyss. The email vanished, dissolving into the digital ether, and silence followed. The same silence I'd clung to. It lasted until exactly 5:47 p.m. My phone vibrated on the glass table. The name Marcus lit up the screen. I watched it pulse, insistent and demanding, until the call went to voicemail. Silence. For 3 minutes. Then again at 6:02. And again at 6:15. At 6:23, a voicemail notification appeared. I put it on speakerphone in the empty office. "Emma, what the hell have you done?" His voice, usually so velvety and confident, was choked with rage. "Alexandria came home in tears. She said you sabotaged her interview because of some family grudge. This is insane. You can't mix family and work like that. Call me back now." End of message. I deleted it with a single tap, like wiping a stain off a perfectly clean surface. At 7:14, the house phone rang. Mom. Her voice was thin, pleading, full of that eternal desire not to rock the boat. "Emma, dear, Alexandria is very upset. She says you were hostile at her interview. I know you might not get along, but she's Marcus's fiancée. Can't you just help her get the job? For the family?" I didn't say a word. I just hung up. The sound was dry and final. And at 8:02, he called. "Dad." This time I answered, not out of a desire to talk, but to end it once and for all. "Emma, I just found out what happened. You have to fix this." "Hi, Dad." My voice sounded strangely calm in my own ears. "How was Christmas Eve?" "Don't be smart," he barked. And from that single sentence, I pictured his face, frowning, disappointed, like when I was a kid, when I'd get an A in physics and he'd ask why I didn't get an A+. "Alexandria said you were terrible to her, asking impossible questions, making her feel incompetent." I asked her the standard interview questions for a department head position at a level 1 hospital, I stated crisply, the same ones I asked the other 2 candidates. "She's a qualified surgeon." "She's a fairly qualified surgeon," I corrected, feeling cold steel boiling inside. "With minimal leadership experience, below average results, and a weak research portfolio. She's not cut out for this position." "You're rejecting her because she's dating Marcus." "I'm rejecting her because she doesn't meet our standards, which, as Chief Medical Officer, is my job." There was silence on the other end, deep, confused. Then came a hesitant, "Chief Medical Officer? What?" And then it hit me. Not with anger, pure, almost clinical amazement. He didn't know. He genuinely didn't know. That's my position for 3 years now. I thought you said you worked in administration. I'm in administration. I'm the chief medical officer, I said slowly, as if explaining a complex concept to a child. I oversee all clinical activities of this 847-bed hospital. I manage 2,847 employees. I make final hiring and firing decisions for every clinical position, including department heads. Pause. I let the words sink in. Alexandria Burke applied for a position at my hospital. I interviewed her. She's not a good fit. That's the whole story. Emma, you can't do this. She'll be family. There was a familiar note in his voice. Not an argument, but an order based on some order of things that I always violated. Then she should have been more careful. My voice grew quieter, but sharper, sneering at administrative positions as just paperwork, and at people like me as fake doctors. I paused briefly to dig the blade in. How much of her interview process do you think was about her qualifications? And how much was about her assumption that she could exploit a family connection she didn't even know existed? That's unfair, he shouted, and there was so much childish helplessness in that cry. What's unfair is expecting me to compromise my professional standards to make your future daughter-in-law feel better. I have 2 other candidates who are truly excellent. I'm hiring one of them. Your mother and I, we are very disappointed. And that was the last straw. Not anger, not resentment, emptiness. A dull, deafening emptiness. I'm sure you are, I said, getting up from the couch and walking to the picture window. Below me lay the city, strewn with lights, my city, which I had partly built. You've been disappointed in me my whole life. This doesn't change anything. Dad, I have to go. I have a board meeting tomorrow morning where I'm presenting my hiring recommendation. Emma. For the first time, something other than anger sounded in his voice. Confusion, perhaps. Good night, Dad. I hung up. The world outside didn't collapse. The lights continued to burn. But the attack didn't stop. The phone had been a minefield all evening. Marcus left 3 more voicemails, his voice breaking into a hoarse whisper, then an outright scream. My mother bombarded me with text messages, from pleading, "Please reconsider for family unity," to accusatory, "This is cruel and petty of you." I read them, one after another, and felt nothing. Only a deep, bone-deep weariness. At 9:47, an unfamiliar number rang. I knew who it was. I answered. Dr. Thornton. This is Alexandria Burke. Her voice was choked, damp with tears and anger. You can't do this. I'll file a complaint. Who? I asked calmly. The board of directors. I report directly to them, and they implicitly trust my hiring recommendations. Next, the medical licensing board. I conducted a professional interview and made a hiring decision based on qualifications. There are no grounds for complaint. To your own hospital's HR department. The entire interview was recorded, and my questions were identical to those asked of all candidates, I said, feeling a strange, almost teacher-like patience. Dr. Burke, if you file a complaint, it will be investigated, and what that investigation will reveal is that you assumed personal connections would replace professional qualifications. That's not the kind of story that will advance your career. A sob, muffled by a hand, was heard on the other end. You're doing this because you're jealous. I sighed. I'm doing this because you're not a good fit. If you were exceptional, I would hire you, regardless of any personal history. But you're not exceptional. You're average. And I don't hire average. I'm a good surgeon. It was a child's cry. Then you'll find a position that matches your skill level. Just not here. I steeled myself for one final, purely professional coup de grace. I suggest you focus on improving your results, building your research portfolio, and gaining real leadership experience. In 5 years, if you achieve that, you can apply again. 5 years, she whispered, and in that whisper, I could hear the collapse of all her hopes for a quick, brilliant leap. "Good luck, Dr. Burke." I hung up. Silence fell over the house, this time truly complete. December 27th, 9 a.m. The boardroom on the top executive floor. The air here smelled of expensive coffee, polished wood, and power. 12 people sat around a huge oval table, their decisions determining the fate of millions of dollars and thousands of lives. Next to them sat the CEO, a man with a political face, and our meticulous CFO. And me. All eyes turned to me as I entered. I nodded and took my seat. I spread a stack of materials in front of me. Evaluation matrices, comparison charts, a printed recommendation. The chairman of the board, a gray-haired man with piercing blue eyes, cleared his throat. Dr. Thornton, his voice, accustomed to command, was filled with businesslike confidence. Please guide us through your final recommendation for the position of Chief of Pediatric Surgery. The silence in the room was almost palpable, thick, ready to absorb every word. Everyone awaited my verdict. I opened the presentation on the screen, and 3 columns lit up in the soft light of the room. Not faces, not stories, pure, ruthless analysis. Colleagues, here's a comparative analysis of the 3 finalists. Let's start with Dr. Chin. I clicked on the slide. Graphs, numbers, citation charts. A Stanford graduate, pioneer of innovative surgical techniques. His research is exceptional. He would be a brilliant, reliable choice. Another click. Dr. Ankuo, Mayo Clinic. Her results aren't just data, they're the gold standard. Proven leadership, an established, funded research program. She doesn't just meet our requirements, she defines them. My top recommendation. I paused, letting the numbers speak for themselves. The board members' gazes swept across the screen, nodding. They saw what I saw, the crystal clarity of excellence. And Dr. Burke, came the question from the table. One of the directors, a man with an intelligent, practical gaze, pointed to the 3rd column. I see she's a finalist. What's there? I clicked on her slide. It was as laconic and dispassionate as the others. Dr. Burke has sufficient basic clinical skills, I began, and every word was weighed on an invisible scale. But she critically lacks the necessary leadership experience and research clout. Her surgical complication rate is 2.1%. That's above not only our target, but also the national average. She has 2 publications in mid-tier journals in 5 years. She has no experience managing a budget or a team. She doesn't meet the standards we set for ourselves. Not even close. My voice didn't waver. This was a report, not an excuse. The board chairman nodded, his gaze firm. Noted. Dr. Thornton, your assessment, as always, is comprehensive. I suggest we forward the proposal to Dr. Ankuo, a salary of $420,000, a full package, and a research budget. Who's in favor? Hands went up around the table. Unanimously, without hesitation. My recommendation was law to them. This trust had been forged over 3 years of saved lives and saved dollars. Dr. Thornton, contact Dr. Ankuo today, the chairman concluded. Let's get this done. The meeting ended at 9:47, punctually, efficiently. At 10:15, back in my office, I dialed the number. Patricia Ankuo answered on the 2nd ring. Dr. Ankuo, this is Dr. Emma Thornton from the Pacific Regional Hospital. I'm pleased to offer you the position of Chief of Pediatric Surgery. Her calm, confident voice on the other end of the line was full of dignity. She accepted the offer. On the spot. No bargaining, no hesitation. She knew her worth. And so did I. The next battle awaited on the family front. Dinner on New Year's Eve. I didn't want to go, but my mother's voice on the phone didn't sound pleading, but rather weary and hopeless. Please come. We need to talk as a family. As a family. Those words were always a trap. I arrived promptly at 6. The atmosphere in the house was thick as broth and just as unpleasant. Marcus greeted me with a look of unrefined rage. He didn't even say hello. You've ruined Alex's career, he blurted out the moment I stepped through the door. Completely. I made a personnel decision based on objective qualifications, I replied, taking off my coat. Coldly, matter-of-factly. That's my job. You humiliated her. You asked her tough questions. I asked the same questions I ask all the other management candidates. If they seem tough to someone unprepared, that's the candidate's problem, not mine. Dad intervened, his voice like a heavy boulder rolling down an old rut. Emma, you could have helped her. Offer her some advice, some support. Help by hiring an unworthy specialist? I shook my head. That's not how I work, Dad. Never. She'll be family, Marcus shouted, his fists clenching. There it is, the core of it all. Family as an indulgence, as a pass to progress. Then she should have thought about it, I said quietly, but so that every word was engraved with steel, before dismissing what I do as paperwork, and implying that I'm not a real doctor. Respect is a two-way street. Mom wrung her hands, her face a mask of pain. Can't we all just get along? I get along great with people who respect me, I said, looking straight at her. Alexandria didn't respect me. She made that clear on Thanksgiving. And now she's learned that the man she neglected had the power to decide the fate of her career. It's not my fault. It's her fault. You're vindictive, Marcus shouted, and his voice held all the childish helplessness of someone who always got what he wanted. I turned to him, finally allowing the ice in my voice to crack, revealing the heat. Let me ask you, Marcus, did she tell you about her 2+% complication rate? About 2 articles in 5 years? About never managing anything larger than a couple of students? Or did she just say your sister was rude to her? He faltered. I had hit the nail on the head. She said, you asked unrealistic questions. I asked about her quality improvement strategies, about her research agenda, about her leadership philosophy. She couldn't answer, Marcus, because she has no strategies, no agenda, no philosophy. She has a degree and a sense of superiority, and one without the other is nothing. I glanced around this living room where he had always been the center and I the backdrop. I built that hospital's reputation from ruins. I won't let anyone, not even my future family, squander it for their ambitions. She's broken, Mom said quietly, tears in her eyes. Real tears. But not for me. Never for me. Then maybe it will make her better. That's how people grow, through pain and learning their limits. Dad's face turned purple. You were always difficult, Emma. Always thought you were smarter than everyone else. That was the last straw. The last one. No, Dad, I'm just better at my job, which you'd know if you'd ever looked at me, not through me. I picked up my purse. I came because Mom asked me to. I've said everything I needed to say. I'm leaving. Emma, wait, Mom began, but her voice trailed off. I'm tired of waiting, Mom. Tired of being invisible. Tired of my successes being overlooked and my principles being called difficulty. I took a step toward the door, but turned around one last time. I'd been silent my whole life. Not today. I'm the chief medical officer of one of the best hospitals in the country. I make more in a year than Dad made in 5. I'm quoted in Forbes. I speak at conferences people dream of attending. I create systems that save thousands of lives, and none of you ever, listen, never asked me how this work was. Never asked me to tell you. Not once. I looked at Marcus. Be mad at whomever you want. At yourself for choosing someone who judges by the cover. At her for her arrogance. But not at me, for doing my job honestly. Getting mad is the last thing a coward can do. I walked out, slamming the door, softly, but loud enough for the sound to echo forever in the silence of this house. Marcus followed me out to the car. Because of this, Alex and I will probably break up, he said, his voice a strange combination of accusation and confusion. I opened the door. No, Marcus, you will break up because your relationship was built on her brilliance and your reflection in it. And when the brilliance faded, it turned out you had nothing to talk about. My only fault here is that I stopped being the convenient, quiet sister and became the one who says no. And that's your problem, not mine. I can't believe you're my sister. And I can't believe it took you 35 years to notice I'm any good at anything. I got behind the wheel and started the engine. Happy New Year, Marcus. The window rolled up, cutting off him, this house, this past. Dr. Patricia Ankuo started work on February 1st. Within 3 months, she hadn't just become the head of the department. She had created a magnet that began attracting the most complex cases from all over the state. Our pediatric surgery rates soared to unattainable heights. She was the exception worth fighting for. Alexandria Burke remained at her community hospital. Through professional channels, I heard that she had enrolled in management training and was finally taking on serious research. And thank goodness, perhaps my no was a better lesson for her than any yes. Marcus and Alexandria broke up in March. Mom, in one of our rare, tense conversations, mentioned that Alex had decided to focus on her career. I remained silent. Marcus, she said, was rethinking his life priorities. I remained silent, too. In April, the board of directors approved my promotion, Executive Vice President of Clinical Operations. 4 hospitals, 23 clinics, salary $645,000. Responsibility for everything. My empire had grown. And then Forbes came. Not just a mention, but a full-blown 12-page article. How Dr. Emma Thornton built one of America's most effective healthcare systems. They spent 6 hours with me, digging into the essence. When the magazine came out, I didn't tell Rebecca to frame it. I put it on my desk. 2 days later, a message arrived from my father. Saw the article in Forbes. Very impressive. Can we grab lunch? I stared at the words. There was no proud or sorry in them. Simply a statement and a proposal. Perhaps a first step. Perhaps another attempt to get things back on track. I thought for a minute. Then I typed a reply. Neither emotional nor angry. Clear, like a business proposal. I'm free Tuesday at noon in my office. He arrived. Exactly at 12. I saw his silhouette behind the frosted glass, hesitant, indecisive. Rebecca let him in, and on her face I read a slight, professionally concealed triumph. He walked in and stopped at the threshold of my new office on the executive floor. Not just an office, a command center. A floor-to-ceiling window overlooked the city, the bay, the infinite. He saw it. His eyes slowly, as if against his will, slid over the plaque on the door. Dr. Emma Thornton, Executive Vice President of Clinical Operations. On the wall, where now hung not only diplomas, but also awards from the American Medical Association, from the Regional Health Department, a crystal sphere for leadership and systems transformation. As we walked down the hall to the cafeteria, 2 doctors rushed past us with clipboards. "Good afternoon, Dr. Thornton," they nodded almost in unison, and there was not a hint of obsequiousness in their voices, only deep, hard-won respect. He saw it. I saw the head of the cardiac surgery department, a man in his 50s, gray-haired and authoritative, stop me as I walked, quickly agreeing on the protocol, and his "Emma, do you have a minute?" rang with equal partnership. We sat in the nearly empty executive cafeteria at a table by the window. We ordered sandwiches. The silence between us rang like a taut string. "I didn't know," he finally exhaled, looking not at me, but at the city spread out below, as if seeing its scale for the first time. "I didn't know any of this." His confession hung in the air, fragile and bitter. "I tried to tell you. For years, you didn't listen. You heard the words administration, hospital, and your brain shut down. You conjured up a picture of papers and boring meetings. I thought," he choked, taking a sip of water, "I thought you were just some kind of manager, like an office manager, only in a hospital." "I am a manager," I said softly, but ruthlessly. "I manage the clinical operations of a system of 4 hospitals. Lives, deaths, budgets worth hundreds of millions, the fates of thousands of employees. That's work. A job you've never considered real. I looked at his face, which for the first time in my life showed not condescension, but bewildered awareness. You valued Marcus's presentations on medical equipment sales more than my reports on a 17% mortality reduction, because one sounded like business and the other like paperwork. You were wrong. I was wrong, he whispered. His eyes were wet. For the first time, I'd seen him cry. Not from anger, from shame. Yes, you were wrong. We ate. The silence had a different quality now. Heavy, but not hostile. Punctured like ice after the first blow. Can we start over? He asked, and his voice held the plea of an old man who realizes he's missed something enormous. No, I answered without hesitation. You can't start over. You can't erase everything that was, those years of neglect, those devaluing phrases, this pain of invisibility. It's a part of me, a part of who I am now. He cringed, as if struck. But we can start here, now, with the truth. I set my plate aside and looked at him directly. I am no longer the girl who craves your approval. I am Dr. Emma Thornton. I built something meaningful with my own hands, my own mind, my own will. And if you want to be a part of my life, not as a father demanding obedience, but as someone interested in another person, you have to accept that. You have to see me, the real me. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I see you now. Okay, I said, and something in my chest gave a painful lurch and then released. This is the beginning. The changes didn't come overnight. They seeped in, like water through cracked rock, slowly but irreversibly. Mom started calling for more than just family news. Her questions changed. Instead of the usual bored, "So, how's work?" she asked, "Last time you mentioned a telemedicine project for remote areas. How's it going?" At first, it was awkward, forced. Then, sincere. She began to listen, really listen. Marcus resisted longer. His pride was more bruised. But a month later, he called. Without preamble, in a choked voice, "I'm sorry. For everything. For never asking. For thinking my real sales job was more important than your invisible one. For being a blind idiot." "Thank you," I said. And that was all I could say then. "Can I invite you to dinner? Without your parents, so you can tell me, if you want." We met. And I talked for 3 hours straight, without bragging, without simplifying. I talked about the disastrous metrics that needed to be improved, about tyrannical doctors who had to be fired, about the mathematics of salvation, where every percentage point of mortality represents dozens of individuals, dozens of families. I talked about the dizzying moment when the graph first started to rise, about power, which is not a thrill, but a heavy burden. He listened, without interrupting. His eyes gradually widened. "I had no idea," he muttered when I finished. "God, Emma, I had no idea how big this was, how complicated it was. I thought you were just managing budgets." "I know. Now you know. I was a terrible brother. You were a self-absorbed brother. But you're here now. And this changes everything." The family wasn't perfect. Sometimes old patterns would creep in. Dad would inadvertently steer the conversation to the achievements of a friend's son. Mom would try to gloss over the uncomfortable topic of my personal life. But now I had a tool I didn't have before: boundaries. Firm, calm, unshakable. I showed up when I wanted. I left when I felt disrespected. I talked about my work without apology. And they, slowly, painfully, learned. I built a life, not the one they were supposed to like, but the one I wanted. A career forged through struggle, respect earned without compromise. And when now, at social events, or even while waiting in line for coffee, someone asked, "What do you do?" I didn't avert my gaze or say, "I work in a hospital." I looked them in the eye and spoke clearly, with quiet, unwavering pride. I am the Executive Vice President of Clinical Operations for the Pacific Regional Medical System. I oversee the clinical work of 4 hospitals and 23 clinics. I create systems that save lives. The response was usually an impressed silence, sometimes questions, rarely incomprehension. I didn't care. My family was finally impressed too, but their approval no longer felt like oxygen to me. It had become simply a fact, a quiet period at the end of a long sentence. The most important thing, the most important person who was finally impressed, it was me. I looked in the mirror in my immaculate office, in my immaculate suit, and I didn't see the girl who went unnoticed at the holiday table. Not Emma the receptionist, not the fake doctor. I saw Dr. Emma Thornton, a woman who had been through the fire of neglect and emerged from it like a man of steel, a true doctor in the deepest sense of the word, a healer not only of bodies, but also of broken systems, an architect of her own destiny. She had built an entire empire while everyone was too busy to notice. And that quiet, absolute confidence in the reflection of her own eyes was more than enough. That was everything.